Welcome to Plywood Presents. My name is Jeff Shinabarger, and I founded Plywood 5 years ago. And 5 years ago, we were in a very small room with about 100 of us, and we've gotten to be a little bit bigger here tonight. When we started, we were talking about this thing called social entrepreneurship and social innovation. And at that time, I don't think anyone ever knew what that meant. And still today, some of you may be here and not know what that means. But we have a passion for this city to be known as a city for social innovation. We believe that our history is rooted in that. If you combine the history of Dr. Martin Luther King and how he changed humanity forever, and you combine that with Coca-Cola and how they've innovated every aspect of our world through globalization, we want to sit in between those two conversations to come up with new solutions to some of the world's greatest problems. And I believe that the people that can do that are in this room today. Now, you might be sitting there and you think, man, who are these crazy people? I was going through the app and they have some great positions and they're doing some really interesting projects. Well, 5 years ago, there was a guy sitting in the last row that thought some of the same things as you. I can't do this. I have fears. Are my ideas really that great? His name is Brad. And I was talking to him just last week about this because we had 600 people coming to this gathering tonight. And 5 years ago, he had all these fears that his ideas didn't really matter. But he was still there. 5 years now, 5 years later, he has a TV show. He has a book releasing next week. He has one of the most watched YouTube channels in the world. His name is Brad Montague, and he started something called Kid President. We have all been impacted by those short videos and that kid, right, that makes you laugh and dance. So I wonder, who in the room tonight, 5 years ago, is going to be changing our thinking? Could be changing how we operate. Could be changing how we do things at that time. You see, in this room, we have the ability to do something amazing. We may come from different worldviews. We may see things differently, but I do think we do see something very similar. We see something that others don't see. We see the unseen, and we feel the responsibility to change things. We see problems, and we want them to be right. We know that we live in a broken world, and we want to be a part of fixing it. We feel responsible. As I've walked alongside in the last 2 years, over 80 startups, some for-profit, some nonprofit, and some for-profit that have yet to see a profit. Any of those in the room tonight? I've noticed that there's some very similar things that happen. Regardless of our company, whether it's a nonprofit with a budget of $50,000 or a for-profit of $5 billion. As a problem solver within that story, we are all forced to make decisions that we don't know how to make. We're stuck in this question. What do you do when you don't know what to do? Am I the only person in the room that's felt this before? What do you do when your credit card is maxed out and you know that you have to get more inventory to keep the business going? What do you do when Friday is payday and you know there's not enough in the bank? What do you do when you're outgrowing your space and you know you have to get more space? What do you do when someone offers you money with a bunch of stipulations associated with it? What do you do when you're working with your best friends and you both have a different vision of where it could go? What do you do when you know you need to hire someone, but you can't find the right person? And what do you do when you have a ton of work to do and your spouse calls you and says, "Get home now"? Am I the only one that's experienced that moment? And what do you do when it's a Wednesday night and you have 650 people coming to a gathering and the journals that you ordered are going to arrive on Friday? Well, you get some reams of paper, you cut them in half and stick them in the bag. So if any of you ever visit me at my office, I will have a journal for you next week, I promise. It'll be my gift. What do you do when you don't know what to do? You see, what I've realized is that problem solvers are decision makers. You cannot be solving a problem unless you're willing to make the tough decisions when no one else knows what to do. I've been in these moments, and you've been in these moments, and ultimately it really comes down to these two words, yes or no. I believe they're the most powerful words in the dictionary. They define who you will become and what you will be known for. Yes and no. You see, problem solvers make these decisions. They decide to say no when they have to. When most of us in an age when we're wanting more, when we're sharing more through the internet, when we're invited to more opportunities, we have to say no, because when we say yes to everything, we end up becoming nothing, right? When we say no to something, it's amazing how more opportunities start to come our way. Yes or no. These two words determine who we will become and what we will be known for. Now, as I've sat in coffee shops with many of the people in this room, and I've sat over lunch, or maybe you've come to my office and sat in my $5 garage sale that's yellow. A few of you know that garage sale chair. I've realized that whenever you come and have a conversation with me, you're in a moment of tension or transition. And tonight, you might be in one of those moments. You may not know what to do next. And what I've realized is that I can't make the decision for you. You have to make that decision. And as I've been in conversation with people over and over again, what I've realized is that we all have a unique decision-making style that drives how we move forward. And I want to share those with you tonight. I believe there's 7 different decision-making styles that we all have. Now, you're going to listen to these and you're probably going to think, yeah, that's me. No, that's not me. Yeah, that's my wife. Yeah, that's my assistant. Yeah, that's that one person that is sitting next to me that you elbow. You'll think of people that are defining these styles. And I hope it helps you today. Again, I can't make your decisions, but I can help you understand more about how you do make decisions. So the first is the gut reaction. This is my brother-in-law, Mike. He runs a venture capital firm. He's invested in 80 startups in the last 3 years. And he would be the first one to tell you that he has not read a single business plan. He hears the idea and instinctively knows whether it's going to work or not, right? You all have a friend like this, or this might be you. You have a feeling. Either you feel right or you don't. But you can't move forward unless you can sleep that night, right? This is the gut reaction. You deeply understand in a moment, in a second, how to move forward. If this person's on your team, you know if there's a decision that has to be made, they will make it. Now, if you're a data person, which we'll talk about in a little bit, that can frustrate them a little bit. The second, this is the list approach. This is like Chelsea, who just joined our team. I came across her desk last week, and she had these Post-it notes all over her desk. Literally, she had 10 lists of lists, and she had one that was organizing all the 10 lists, right? And it's not just tasks, it's pros and cons of every major decision you have to do. How many of you are this style? You are slowly raising your hand. There's only one, apparently, in the audience. So the list approach, they try to make pros and cons. They try to imagine every single aspect of what could happen based on this decision, right? Now, the challenge in this is we all know that pros and cons lists never end, right? You can keep adding to it all along the way. There's the list approach. The third, this is the data-driven. This is like a guy I tried to hire this year. I made him an offer. He responded to me and he told me, he said, Jeff, I put that offer into my spreadsheet and then my 5-year projections are not exactly where I want them to be for my family. I said, what kind of spreadsheet you got, all right? They want the data. They want the information. They want to have as much research as possible to make the best choice to move forward. These are the data-driven individuals. The fourth, this is collective reasoning. This is like my friend Chris. He leads an organization of 300 young leaders. At any moment, he wants as many people in the room as possible. If there's a problem that needs to be solved, might as well get everyone in the room with all the different aspects and let everyone vote. Now, this is great when there is a collective decision, but what happens when there's 5 people that are on one side of the equation and five people on the other? It ultimately comes back to that leader. Collective reasoning is inclusive, not exclusive in decision making. The next, this is the story living. This is my friend Leroy. He decided last summer to take his whole family on a journey across the United States in an RV that ran off of vegetable oil, right? If you ask these people what a great vacation are, they might say, I want to climb Mount Kilimanjaro with 5 friends I met on Twitter yesterday, right? They are living for the story. Why? Because that's all that matters. You only live once. They abide by this mentality. Now, they're a ton of fun around a campfire. They are the story living individuals. Next are the spiritually driven. This is my friend Ron. He leads an organization in Guatemala. He has been running this for over 20 years, and he does not know Spanish. Now, Ron makes decisions not just because he even understands what the individuals know in his community. He goes to the mountaintop and he prays. And 3 days later of fasting and praying, he has a decisive direction of how to move forward. It's amazing. I remember him telling me about this mountain that they built their whole organization on. And he really felt called to go to this place, this specific residence that was at the top, and asked them to buy it, and he had no money. And he said to them, I believe that I'm called to buy this mountain, and I don't have any money, but I'm willing to give you an IOU. And the guy said yes, and he had all the money within 6 months. And he's never asked for money. It's an amazing gift that he has. These are the spiritually driven individuals. Now this, you might not think is a style, but these are the passive, undecided individuals. My friend Erin, we were having a conversation as a team about these styles, and she admitted to being a passive, undecided style. And then we had a conversation about 10 minutes later. She was releasing an email. We were trying to decide what exactly to say in the email, and she said, well, here's my opinion, but honestly, I'm okay with whatever you guys decide. Well, it's like, of course you are. You're a passive, undecided individual, right? They're okay with any decision that they don't have to make. They truly, if you make the decision for them, they're going to run with it. They are in, but they will never make the choice. If they're in a relationship with someone and they know it's ending, they wait for the other person to end it. This is a passive, undecided individual. So those are the 7 different styles. And the reason why I think this is important is when you understand who you are, it'll help you better understand how you should make decisions. Now, you might have been listening to those and you think, well, depending on the situation, I might act in a different way. You may have chameleon-like reflexes, right, to decision making. And that could be true, but I do believe when you think about the major decisions in your life, when you bought a house, when you chose what school to go to, when you chose maybe your life partner, or these major choices, the job that you have today, I have a feeling that one decision-making style stood out among the rest. And the reason why I think it's important to know this is you need to surround yourself with other styles to make more informed choices. Yes or no? These are the 2 most powerful words in the dictionary. Now, on your table, there's a little envelope that says yes or no. On the sides of your rows, there's another envelope that says yes or no. If you pull that out, it's a black envelope, and share it with your table, there's a little card in it. It says, on one side it says, I will say yes, or what does it say? Say yes to on one side, and it says, say no to on the other. Hopefully you'll pass these in just a second. 3 weeks ago, I got to walk through the new Human and Civil Rights Museum here in Atlanta. It's an amazing new addition to our city. And in the bottom floor, they have the King Papers. And the King Papers are all the documents from Dr. Martin Luther King. It was all these amazing speeches that were printed out on a typewriter, and then he went in and just changed little things right before he did his speeches. And it was amazing because I think sometimes you forget that Dr. King was human, you know? And you want to see those scribbles. And one thing really stuck with me when I was there. They had his wallet, and inside his wallet there was a piece of paper. And that piece of paper he kept with him at all times. And it read this: Gandhi speaks for us, quote, "In the midst of death, life persists. In the midst of darkness, light persists." Then he added his own words: "We are today in the midst of death and darkness. We can strengthen life and live by our personal acts of saying no to violence, by saying yes to life." I believe Dr. King had such clarity in what he was supposed to do, what he was designed to do, that he took this statement and made decisions based on what he was saying yes and no to in life. And the reason why I gave you that card is because I think you should take the moment to think about what is most important to you. What we say yes and no to will forever define who we become and what we are known for. For me, on my card, I have it saying, say yes to family and say no to fear. Say yes to family. Why? Because it's the hardest thing to compete against work. I feel it all the time, but I don't want to not prioritize my family. My wife and I came up with a statement: if we change the world and we lose our family, we lose. And I need to keep that in the front of my mind at all times. And then say no to fear. Why? Because when I am in a major decision, the one thing that usually pulls me back from making the choice that I need to make is the fears of failure in the midst of it. So that's why I want to focus on those two things. What will you say yes to and what will you say no to? Just this past fall, my little boy Nico and I and my wife and daughter were on the Beltline. We had parked on one side of the Beltline and walked about a mile and met up with some friends at a Mexican restaurant. And in the middle of dinner, we heard the thunder in the air. We heard the rain start pouring on the top of the restaurant. And I looked at Andre and I did what any dad would do in that moment. I pulled out my iPhone and looked up the radar on weather.com. I looked at the radar and noticed it was one of those red dots that basically filled up the entire state and that we had no way to get to our car. It was a mile away. Meanwhile, Nico's at the end of the table, very restless. That's a nice way to say it. So I looked at Andre and I looked at Nico and I stood up and I grabbed Nico. And we went to the front door, and I remember I was on the edge of that door frame and I was thinking, what am I gonna do? So I put Nico on my shoulders and I walked out. And I remember passing a couple of restaurants and people were looking at me like I was a bad dad, right? Running in the rain with a 1.5-year-old kid on my shoulders. And then I had to run faster because the rain was like pouring. And we finally got on the Beltline and I was running faster and faster and Nico was bouncing on my shoulders and I realized he started laughing. And he started giggling. And I started laughing and giggling. And next thing you know, people started passing us on bikes because they got caught in the storm too. And they were laughing. And they said, "Who is that kid? He's hilarious. He's having a blast." And I ran as fast as I possibly could to the end of the Beltline, got in the car, stripped him of his wet clothes, found a towel, wrapped him up, put him inside, sat in the front seat, turned the heat on, and he was still laughing. And I remember in that moment, it was probably one of the best memories I've had with Nico in his first 2 years. Why? Because I said yes to my family. What we say yes and no to will significantly define who we become and what we are known for. So as you start this adventure the next 2 days, as you hear from all these different presenters, I hope you take a moment to consider what you want to say yes to in life and what you need to say no to. And again, welcome to Plywood Presents.